my attorney, Linda Klein, was like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. And because in the moment I was so excited, I was just like, oh my God, yeah, sure, you can have equity in the company.
Welcome to the brndBrief podcast, where we discuss the latest trends on the business side of fashion, beauty, entertainment, and tech, and the impact of technology on driving brand growth. This podcast is powered by Brand Method Media Group, and I'm your host, Kelly Kelly. Today's guest is Denise Reese, founder of Grace the Collection, a unique array of accessible luxuries for the individual who navigates the realities of life with elegance and grace. Welcome to the show, Denise.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelly. I'm excited to be here.
So I would love to take the audience on the journey way back to when you started Grace the Collection, what led up to that, and really just more insight into the vision.
Yeah, no, for sure. It seems so long ago. It's been 4 years. So I started working on Grace the Collection in 2020 during the height of COVID. So it was a COVID baby, as many businesses have turned out to be. And so just before COVID, when my boyfriend and I first started dating, anytime we would go somewhere, somebody was always stopping me about something. Oh my God, I love your glasses. I love this. I love that. And he's like, see, that's somebody that you can sell something to. You need to figure out what you can sell to them, because whatever you're selling, they're going to buy. And I love glasses. And so he was like, well, why don't you work with your person that you get eyewear from, and maybe you can like do some kind of a collaboration. And then he was like, well, just put a logo on a t-shirt. And I'm like, yeah, that none of that is me. I don't want to do any of that. And I've always had somewhat of an entrepreneurial spirit. And we say in Girl Scouts, once a Girl Scout, always a Girl Scout. I was going to say I used to be a Girl Scout, but I'm still a Girl Scout and also serve on the board for Girl Scouts of Greater Atlanta. But, my first entrepreneurial venture was selling Girl Scout cookies. And then when I was a Campfire Girls sold these peanut brittle candy bar kind of situations. So always kind of had that in the back of my mind. I was like, I probably can do this. And then I'm in sales as a day job, technology sales. So I'm like, okay, I know how to sell stuff, but I needed to be something that I love. And so fast forward, COVID happens. I realize, I look around and I'm like, I'm spending a lot of money on candles and home fragrance. I love it, have always loved it since I was young. And my mom used to have candles burning in the house back when home interiors was a thing, with the little sconces that you put the scented candles in. I can still, every time I talk about that, I can still smell the French vanilla candle that she used to always burn. And I was like, you know what? I think this is my thing. And so started through the process of creating a business plan. I worked with a consultant. Once I'd settled on the fact that, okay, this is what I'm going to do, that consultant was needed because I still had a day job, and they were able to keep me on track with all of the things that I needed to do to put in place to have something that was viable at the end of it. So we talked marketing, we talked branding, we talked whether or not I was going to create the candles, build or pour the candles myself, or if I was going to use a supplier, who my target audience and target market was. So we did all of that before I even had a product. And that was months in the making. And then I got the domain and started down the path of copywriting or trademarking. And finally, 2 years later, so started working on the company in 2020, 2022, we launched. And now here we are 4 years later, and it's like an actual thing. And I still can't believe it.
So you mentioned a background in sales. So
yes,
going from sales to founding a luxury home brand, obviously based on the journey you just shared, you took a very, very strategic approach. It wasn't just, I like candles, this smells good, let me throw up a website. How else does your background play into how you approach the business, Grace the Collection?
So I'm so thankful for my corporate upbringing because in each role that I've had, I consider myself to be an entrepreneur. So I was inside of a company, but I was building or growing something. Or there's been instances where companies that were in another market, in Europe as an example, wanted to set up shop in Atlanta or in the US, and I helped to open up an office for them here in Atlanta and build out their business in the Southeast. So I've always kind of had that sort of at the in my repertoire, if you will. And working for really big companies like Accenture, like AWS, and working on the professional services side of things where you're consulting with companies and helping them to implement technology in a way that's going to be transformative for their business, that gave me insight into the things that I needed to be doing once I decided to make that step. And so, irrespective of if you have a huge company, if it's a startup, if it's a service, or if you have a product, the business fundamentals don't change. You still have to know who your target market is, your target customer. You still have to know the mechanics of it all. Like what does your P&L look like? What are those things that you need to be investing in? What are those things that maybe you need to pull off of the shelf? And that's even a conversation that I'm having, with myself now. Do I have too many products? But then the minute that I think about removing something, then an order comes through or a couple of orders, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe that product lives to see another day. So all of that to say, I'm thankful for that background because, to your point, it has allowed me to be more strategic in terms of the way that I've gone about the business. And what it also has meant is that I've taken a little bit longer, but I was able to bring people along on the journey with me. So once I was ready to actually start fully putting it out there, like, okay, this is a thing, we're going forward, then I set up Instagram and set up a Facebook page and started to talk more about it and garner followers and get people thinking about the product and thinking about me in connection to the company and to the product. And I think those things have served me well. It means that I've moved a little bit slower and probably could have done things more quickly, but I tend to be very thoughtful and pragmatic when I do things. And so I would rather take a little bit longer and for it to be done the right way as opposed to just delving into something just to be able to say that I've got a company or I've got a business.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a lesson a lot of entrepreneurs, especially today where everything seems so instant, even when it's
Yeah.
really not. People don't often take their time to lay that foundation. And then,
Mhm.
I mean, like key stuff. And so then
Yeah,
when things go south, they're, confused or wondering why. And it's like there are some, like you said, some key fundamentals when it comes to business, regardless of the business type, that have to be taken care of.
that's right. That's right. And I remember when we started working together as well, you actually made me feel, I don't know if I ever shared this with you, Kelly, but you made me feel really good about the fact that I had a style guide. Like I had fonts, I had a brand guide. And you were like, oh my gosh, you have all of this. And I was like, well, doesn't
Listen.
everybody have that? So shout out to
No.
Emily Wells at Emily Wells Design for making sure that I had all of my ducks in a row once I was ready to hire someone to help me to continue to bring the vision to life.
Listen, I'm telling you now, and I told you then, that is not the norm. Small and large companies,
Mm,
they just don't either, they're not interested in making that investment or they don't know to do it. It's
yeah,
more often that they don't want to because it's not something that yields an immediate direct return, so to
yeah,
speak. But it's so worth it in terms of your brand. And, we've been working together for some time now, but I feel like we're developing a very, very strong brand awareness, brand recognition, because everything is cohesive from the
yeah.
website to the social to the email. It all flows together. And it seems small to some, but it's super important in terms of, building a long lasting brand.
Yeah, no, it is definitely one of the things that I think about it. Some days when like this first quarter has been really slow, and as I talk to other product-based founders and companies, they're saying the same thing. Like
Mhm.
it's just been a slow time. But to your point, those mechanisms that you put in place to create that cohesiveness and brand awareness, are things that even when sales aren't coming through, even when things aren't happening as quickly as you think, they're still happening. And they're all things that are kind of continue to lay the foundation for something great. And, you do have to keep that in mind because, as I like to say, LLC Twitter will have you thinking that, you just create an LLC and you can get a G Wagon in your business name. And
And
it's like,
$500,000, I
that's
mean,
right.
fund your business.
Exactly.
You briefly mentioned your brand designer and that shouting her out. And that brings me to another point. I know this, but I would love to share with the audience. You have a very strong core value of a commitment to supporting women artisans and partnerships. Can you share more about that? What is the driving force behind that, and maybe just share like what goes into that when you're selecting partnerships?
Yeah, I think being a woman founder myself, being a Black woman founder, I know how difficult it has been as I've been growing and, well, creating, growing, and then, or creating, building, and now scaling, or attempting to scale the business. It's hard. And so I also know how difficult it can be when you're trying to get your product or your service in front of the right people. And, it's not always just about us as the founders. Yes, we are the face, but even if you're just a founder of one or you just have a small team, there's still a bunch of folks in the background that you have to have on staff to be able to bring it all together. And I think just knowing that, I just feel like there needed to be some intention and thought put into, well, if I'm going to say that I am an advocate, passionate advocate for women, and I want to buy from a Black woman, and I want to support Black women and women of color, founders of color, and I want to support those entities, then I need to also live and breathe that as I'm growing the company. So it's just something that I feel like it's a part of my personal ethos that has just carried over into the company as well. So everybody from my supplier who hand pours every single product, my designer, my product photographer, lifestyle photography, and branding photography, you and your team with social media, email, even the person. So Sean, actually, my boyfriend actually built the first iteration of the website, and got it all up on Shopify. But then when I went to reskin the website and to make it into what you see today when you go to gracethecollection.com, even though I went through Fiverr, I wanted to hire a woman to be able to even do that work. So I really just try to be very thoughtful about that. And so far, it's introduced me to some amazing women businesses that I might not have known about otherwise. Even my attorney is a woman as well. So I feel like there's just a real passion for me for that. And I think it makes such a difference.
I love that. Now, let's talk about the creative process behind products and ideation and all of that. How do you come up with a plan of what you're going to release and building a collection?
So I knew when I first started the company that I didn't want to just do candles. Candles was always going to be the starting point because it's the easiest thing to do. But I knew that, okay, if this is going to be a collection, that it needs to not just be a collection of candles, it needs to be a collection of products. So I had already decided even before I placed an order, what the other ancillary products for the collection would be. I knew that I wanted to do a spray or a room spray. And actually, Emily is the person who said, you know what, why don't we call it a spritz? And I was like, yes, let's do that. Let's call it a spritz.
Listen, because
So,
you said spray, and I was like, what is that? And we do
right,
spritzes. What is a
exactly.
spray?
Exactly. So we now, I knew we have the spritz coming, and I knew that that's something that I wanted to do. And then I also love reed diffusers. Not everybody likes diffusers, but I love them. And I actually have a Grace the Collection diffuser that I've been testing for probably over a year now. And so that will hopefully make its way. I'm hoping that it can be a 2024 project, but it may get pushed to 2025. And then we'll also end up doing some diffuser oils because I love diffusers. the water diffusers, and that's a big thing. And so to have the products and the fragrances to kind of be available in that modality would be great also. But it was, again, it goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning, Kelly. I was very thoughtful about all of this, even like before I ever placed an order for a fragrance oil, before a box was purchased. I was very
So big
intentional and
picture
thoughtful.
thinking.
Yes, absolutely. And I tend to be a big picture person. I'm not always great with some of the details, like the details that are cool and fun. I'm good with those, but some things I'm like, oh, get somebody else to do that. But it was definitely thoughtful. And it's been doing, I think taking that approach has been helpful for me as I start to think about like what's on the horizon. Like I don't have to think too far in advance because I've already got some notes and things that that I've been working on. But now that we know that, okay, these are the kind of the next products that are coming, I'm thinking now like, what else should we be thinking about? So I'm already thinking, maybe 3, 4 years in advance of other things that we can bring to market. So I even had someone to tell me, well, what if you did like an array of like towels and linens and bed sheets? And I was like, okay, maybe
I can see
possibly
that.
it could kind of work together. But yeah, it's just it's just taking that time to think about, okay, what makes this a cohesive thing, and also not veering too far off the path of that as well, because home fragrance is all encompassing, right? It's a huge market. And so I had to also think about, okay, what parts of that landscape can I be value adding in, and what can actually create longevity and scale for the company. So there's definitely been some thought that's been put into all of this.
Of course there has. Are you kidding me? Now, building a brand from scratch is a lot of work. Can you share a particularly challenging time in the journey thus far of Grace the Collection and how you overcame that? Because you're still here.
I am still here. Listen, I feel like Kelly, I feel like every day there is something that I can think about. But I will tell you, when I was first starting, I mentioned that I was working with a consultant. And this was someone who I actually was a customer of their company and their brand. And through that process, we started to develop a friendship, but they were the entity that I went to when I first started to create the company. And that's actually how I got introduced to Emily, was through that relationship. And I had a particular supplier that I had in mind that I had already been researching, not fully realizing that the consultant I was using was also using this supplier for their company. And I thought, oh my God, this must be a sign. This was meant to be. It was meant for us to work together. And I had done a bespoke fragrance experience with this individual. And as we're getting to the end of our engagement and we're getting to the point of, we're almost ready to launch the original Grace candle. And things went awry. It went way left. It went way, way left. And we probably need a lot of wine and a lot of time for me to tell you all of the things that happened. But at the end of it all, they wanted to have an equity stake in my company in exchange for using the fragrance that I had created and actually paid for in their bespoke fragrance workshop.
Oh
And
dear.
thankfully, my attorney, Linda Klein, was like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. And because in the moment, I was so excited. I was just like, oh my God, yeah, sure, you can have equity in the company. But then when I went back and I started to put my business hat on, and I was like, wait a minute, I just paid you like $6,000 for your consulting services. And I do not mind paying people for their services. So it wasn't even about that. But what it was about was, typically when someone wants equity in your company, they fund all of that. So
Mhm.
they fund, like, I wouldn't have had to pay for those services. I wouldn't have had to pay for the branding and marketing and all of those things, because that person takes that on in exchange for
Right.
equity once you launch. So we came up with a plan that we both thought, my attorney and I thought would be a not only viable, but fair, equitable exchange for us. She didn't like that and cut me off from working with the supplier. Like literally one day they just would not
Oh my
return my phone
gosh.
calls. And then she said, yeah, well, I made that introduction, so we have an agreement. Now she didn't tell me this initially, but we have an agreement that if I bring anyone to them, then they have to work through me, but never told me this on the front end. So that is part of the reason why it took 2 years from the time of me actually founding the company, getting the domain, setting up the LLC to actually launching, because then I had to, so this would have been at the end of December of 2020. I would have been ready to launch. But when this happened, I had to go back to the lab and literally start from scratch and take all of 2021 to
Jeez.
then find a new supplier, figure out if I even wanted to still do Grace the Collection, because at this point I'm like, okay, God, you put this in my heart and you've manifested this thing for me, but maybe it's not supposed to be done right now. And it was probably summer, like late spring, early summer of 2021, that I found Jamil Nolan at Harbor Mill Candles, who is my supplier. She is amazing. And I found her because another artisan that I love, Reese Fields Candles, there his number 5. I have it on a subscription because it is that good. I love it. And as I was doing research, his vessel was on her website. And because I had experienced his products, I was like, oh, I need to work with her. And so I started literally, like, we laugh about it now, but she was like, Denise, I thought you were crazy, because I was literally stalking her on Instagram. Every time she would post something, I was responding to the post. And finally, she's like, Denise, I do not do business in DMs. Please send me an email. And so, as they say, the rest is history. But that was in the very early days, and it taught that whole thing, that whole process taught me a lot. But one of the main things is to have a good attorney, because a good attorney, they cost a lot of money, but they can keep you out of some craziness. And I'm so thankful for that. And it also meant that, it took a little bit of time to actually get to market. But through the connection with Jamil, we got to the fragrance houses to be able to create brand new scents. And so then the current Grace fragrance is, I can't keep it in stock. So it all ended up working out the way that it should. But there was a moment where I was like, I don't know if this is going to actually ever happen.
Wow. That's all. I'm always very intrigued by some of the stories of, when things went really wrong. Because I wasn't expecting that. And we've been working together for a while. But and I could see how that can be completely daunting. That is literally cutting your business off at the knees. That's not a disagreement about, money or necessarily money or something small. That's huge. If you don't have a
Yeah,
supplier, you don't have a product
at
in your
all.
business.
Nothing.
So
Like no business, right?
no
Nothing.
business. I have nothing. I cannot create
Yeah,
anything.
yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. But, everything always, we may not know when it's happening, why it's happening, but after the fact, I look back and I look at some things that even transpired with that individual's business, that I'm just so thankful that we were not aligned, because that could have really been, it could have broken everything. And so I'm thankful that, sometimes no's are protection, and
They are.
we don't recognize it.
And they feel so daunting and hard at the
Yeah.
time. But
Yeah.
when you get a little distance and you look back, you're like, whoo,
Yes.
my
Yes. And I
goodness.
will tell you, I actually, when we were setting up and we were trying to get my little display behind me, I don't know if you can see this, but this was the original box. And you
Oh,
can see it was so tiny, right? But so if you compare that to, and you have the beautiful Grace the
of
Collection box
course.
behind you. And so when you compare this to what has
Wow.
become, like, it's just, Yeah. So I actually keep this just as a reminder of,
Hmm.
of where we've come from. So yeah.
Love it. So, what's next? What's coming up this year?
Yes.
What new developments are on the horizon for Grace the Collection?
Well, one of the big things that I still, and I don't know why I get so like emotional about this, but we've launched on Macy's.com, which is just like to be able to even say that. And sometimes I just find myself like I'll just go out to the Macy's website and type in Grace the Collection just to like see it come up. But I still can't believe that. And I'm so thankful for that opportunity. So really growing the footprint in Macy's or with Macy's.com to hopefully start getting on the shelves in some major retailers. I've started some conversations with some other large companies that we all know and love, and it takes time, but at least I'm having those conversations. Also looking at how I can build out my retail footprint overall. So I have, some retailers around town that carry the product, but I would love to, and I've actually started some conversations with a bed and breakfast, and potentially having Grace the Collection to be their signature scent, but then they also retail the product as well. Getting out there more in pop-ups and in spaces that I can get closer to new customers. So, and I don't, those pop ups are hard work. They're a
Yeah.
lot. But I realize that there's, I always end up getting like an uptick in orders, followers online. So definitely want to do more of that. And we'll be making some announcements with some new or some partnerships with some events that are coming up as well. And getting these other products out. The room and linen spritz, the boxes are on a shipping container coming over from
Come
China,
on with it.
and they'll be here any time now. So today is the 4th, and Jamil mentioned that they'll probably be with her. They've got to go through customs, and then once they clear customs, FedEx will drop them off at her warehouse, and she'll start fulfilling that product. So looking forward to having the room and linen spritz be available just in time for Mother's Day. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
also can't believe like I'm already starting to think about holiday 2024 as well, and lessons learned from last year and the year before that. And would love to be able to, by the end of 2024, to say that Grace the Collection is, into the 6 figures. We're close. We're not there yet, but we're getting close. So that's a goal of mine. We'll see. I'm working hard to make that happen too.
I know you are. I love it. Being a part of your journey has been so inspirational for me as a friend, as a vendor partner, just to watch you just take it head on. Good days, bad day. I mean, you just keep trucking. And I
Thank
wasn't
you.
going to bring up Macy's. I, of course, had to let you bring it up. But I remember like the call or the email, and it's like, wow, like that is so huge.
Yes,
Macy's.com is so incredible. And
yes.
here you are, less than 2 years in business and already these type of partnerships. And it's just incredible to watch. And I'm so excited to be a part of the journey and to watch you grow. And I mean, it really is an amazing thing to watch.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I really appreciate that. It means more than you know, because you know how it is. When you're
Yeah.
when you're in the thing, you just have blinders on because you're so busy doing the thing. And it's not until like I kind of step away and somebody will text me or they'll reach out and say, "I know I could order from you, but I went on Macy's to purchase because I just can't believe that I can now go on Macy's.com and get your product." And I think initially I was like, oh, but it's just the the digital marketplace. It's like, it's not in store, but it's like that's how these things happen. And so to be able to have that so early in my journey as a founder it's pretty amazing. Even when I think about it, I'm just like, man, that really happened.
But I think it's really a true testament to you personally and professionally. I mean, you're a very authentic person. You have a really good spirit. So watching you build a real community is incredible. And, being a fly on the wall of the relationships that you're building is incredible. And then professionally, like you said, your background, this is not just, I picked a couple of cents off something online, threw my label on it, and threw up, a Shopify site. You
Yeah,
really, really put thought and strategy behind it. And just to watch it grow is incredible. But I'm guilty of that as well. If I don't step out of it and look back, I will do that too. I will poo poo things and be like, oh, well, it's just,
yeah,
and this year I've made it a really, really strong commitment to myself to celebrate the small wins, because I will gloss over some stuff real quick and
yeah.
move on to the next fire to be put out. I'm
I
very guilty
know.
of that.
And why are we like this, Kelly?
I
Why are
don't
we like
know.
this? Why do we do this to ourselves? And you know what, you're so right. Like we have to celebrate this every win, no
Yep.
matter how big or how small, because they all add up to something pretty amazing. And then when I start to talk to, I don't know if you've noticed this as well, whenever I talk to other founders, and I kind of tell them, like I went to a networking event a few months ago, and a friend of mine who's a physician who's branching out into her own sort of endeavor. She invites me to this event, and we're just talking to the other founders that are there. And so I'm talking to them about my company, and I'm thinking, oh, this is just my little company. And it was just before the Macy's launch. So we're still going through the process, but I felt comfortable enough, like we're far enough down the path that I can tell people like this is happening. And I had someone ask me, well, if you've done all of that, then why are you here? And I was like, because number one, I need to continue growing it. So I need some funding just like you do. And also just to connect with people and just to learn from other people who have, who are maybe further down the path than what I am. But all of that to say, like just that interaction, and there have been others as well that I think sometimes we don't realize the impact that we're having
No.
because we're so busy, we're just doing the thing. And that's what we want to focus on. But I'm going to take your advice and start celebrating all of the wins, no matter how big or how small, because they all matter.
Because at the end of the day, we're, in my mind, I frame it like this. Every day we're creating something from nothing. We're creating the
Yes,
relationships, we're creating the sales, we're creating the traction, we're creating all of these things when it comes to
yes,
our business. And that is huge. That is not light work. You got to
yeah,
wake up every single day, whether you had a good day or a bad day, and you have to make stuff happen every day.
yes.
That's a lot.
It is. It is. And people, they're surprised, but then like not surprised when they realize, because I have a virtual address through
Mm-hmm.
iPostal or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
the location that I use is the one over on Northside Drive. So people thought that like, oh, you must have like, a fulfillment company or something that's like doing all of this. I'm like, no, it's the island in the middle of the kitchen, and we open up the door behind me is a bathroom that leads to a walk-in, and there's candles and boxes in there, and then outside of my unit I have a storage room, and there's stuff like everywhere. And I'm like, to your point, even when you don't have a great day, but those orders still got to get out.
Yep.
And folks are like, oh wait, you do everything. I was like, yes, I
Yeah.
do everything.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, this has been great. I know you, but I'm glad that we had this opportunity because I've learned some things I didn't know. And I think that your story is so incredible and inspirational. And I want to share it with my audience and your audience and garner more insight into what it really takes. Like, I pride myself on at this stage in life, developing a community of very real, authentic women, whether it's a mentor, whether it's clients, people that are, light years ahead of me, even mentees. I really try to surround myself personally and professionally with people that just have that authentic spirit. It's a lot of faking and shaking going on. And that it
Yeah.
can get like very daunting, especially when you're trying to learn.
Yes.
Don't sell me the smoke and mirrors. Like, I want to know the real, and not to be in people's business or to judge them, but sometimes it's like, okay, I'm not off track. Like, I'm not
No.
crazy. This is hard.
Yes. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. No, listen, Kelly, you're spot on. And I think I have, and I know you always tell me like you are the brand, and I get it, but sometimes I shy away from being in front too much because even I remember when, I heard when I did the content for the launch, right? And as we're finishing up, and I heard you in my head, it's content, it's content. I was like, okay, this could be some really good content. And so I pulled out my phone and, started just recording and then recorded myself. And I remember sending that to you, and I was like, I don't know, this might be too much. And you were like, nope, it's absolutely not. It's
And
exactly
I'm gonna put it on record that I need more, please. Thank you. Okay.
duly noted, duly noted, duly noted. But I shy away from it just because I never want to be that person that is trying to monetize trauma,
Mhm.
monetize pain, or even give the appearance like everything is so great and wonderful too, because I think there's a lot of that going on. And so it's like finding that perfect
The
mix of,
balance.
yeah, but regardless, all of us, we are the brand. We are a brand. We are our brand. And it's interesting how, you can't separate Denise Reese from Grace the Collection, and you can't separate Grace the Collection from Denise Reese, because people, when they see that logo, even if they've been gifted something, if they're at an event and they see the logo and the product, they're like, oh my God, where's Denise? Because they know
Mhm.
I'm probably somewhere around. So it's cool to see that happen. And I'm getting better. I'm learning to embrace that part of being a founder. And because it's important for people to see the totality of our journey.
Absolutely. So that is going to wrap the show for today. Thank you to our incredible guest, Denise Reese, founder of Grace the Collection. We'll have contact information for Grace the Collection in the show notes for anyone interested in supporting the brand. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. Until next time.